For more than 15 years, the name Garry Kasparov was enough to send a chill down the spine of anyone in the world of chess. He wasn't just a champion, he was this force of nature. Some people even called him a disturbed genius, with these eyes that just burned with a need to win. But here's the thing. His real battles, they weren't just on the 64 squares of a chessboard. His entire life has been one big fight after another against these massive, seemingly unbeatable systems. So let's get into it.
So what was so ridiculous, and what did it cost him to say something like that out loud, in public? Well, that one sentence, right there, that's the exact moment a chess prodigy basically became a public enemy of the Soviet state. And honestly, it was a role he was practically born to play.
To really get this, we have to go back to 1963 in Baku, Azerbaijan, which was part of the Soviet Union then. He was born Gary Weinstein to a family of mixed Armenian and Jewish heritage. So right from day one, he was an outsider in an empire that was all about conformity. His journey from a quiet apartment to the world stage, well, it was going to be absolutely wild.
And the thing is, his rise was just meteoric. At 5 years old, he solves a chess puzzle his parents are completely stuck on. And get this, no one had ever officially taught him how to play. After his father's tragic death, his mother, Clara, she became his rock, his engine. She even changed his last name to the more Russian-sounding Kasparov to help his career. By the time he was 12, the legendary Soviet coach Mikhail Botvinnik took one look at him and basically saw the future of the game.
Now, you have to understand this one key thing about the USSR. Chess wasn't just a game. It was politics. It was war fought on a board. Every single international match was a kind of battle in the Cold War, a way to prove Soviet intellectual might over the capitalist West. So the world champion, he wasn't just some player. He was a walking, talking symbol of the system's power.
But even as a kid, Kasparov was humming a different tune. He was secretly listening to banned musicians, reading forbidden books, all the stuff that talked about freedom and being an individual. And that rebellious spirit, combined with this fiery, intense personality of his, it just set him on a collision course with the rigid Soviet machine. It wasn't just that his chess was different. His whole way of seeing the world was different.
And the system already had its king. His name was Anatoly Karpov. Every great story needs a great rival. And for Kasparov, Karpov was the absolute perfect foil.
I mean, it was a total clash of worlds. On one side, you have Karpov. He was the poster boy for the Soviet champion. Cool, technically perfect, and most importantly, he played by the political rules. And then you have Kasparov. He was the complete opposite, a hot-headed, aggressive outsider with this unpredictable genius and a serious rebellious streak. The establishment had their guy. They really did not want another one.
And they weren't even shy about it. That's a direct quote from the head of Soviet chess, said right to Kasparov's face. Can you imagine? They were actively trying to sabotage his career because they saw his raw ambition as a threat. But Kasparov, well, he was a fighter. He used his own political connections and just forced his way to a title match anyway.
So all of this builds to a massive showdown, the 1984 World Championship. A match that was supposed to be a simple victory lap for Karpov, but instead, it turned into this 5-month-long saga that ended up exposing all the cracks in the Soviet system itself.
The rule seems simple enough. First person to win 6 games is the champion. And at first, it was a complete train wreck for Kasparov. The 21-year-old was getting crushed. He fell behind 5 games to 0. Just one more loss and it's total humiliation. But then, he just dug in. He refused to lose. He fought for 17 straight draws. And then he got a win. Then another. And another. All of a sudden, the score is 5-3, and Karpov, the champion who was supposed to be made of ice, was visibly falling apart.
10 kilograms. That's over 22 pounds. Just think about that. That's how much weight Karpov lost during this marathon. It was taking an incredible physical toll on him. He was on the verge of a complete breakdown, while Kasparov had all the momentum. Victory felt certain. And that's when the system stepped in.
The head of the International Chess Federation, a guy with very close ties to Moscow, just stops the match, abruptly. The official reason? Oh, concern for the players' health. But everybody knew what was really going on. They were saving their guy, Karpov, from a humiliating defeat. It was just a blatant, politically motivated move.
Now, what Kasparov did next was something no one had ever seen before. He didn't just accept it, he literally stormed into a press conference and declared war. He publicly accused the Soviet authorities of stealing his victory. In the USSR at that time, that was just unthinkable. An athlete simply did not defy the state like that. And in that one moment, the legend of Kasparov the dissident was born.
Luckily for him, the world was changing fast. By the time they had the rematch a year later, the Soviet Union had a new leader, Mikhail Gorbachev, and a new policy of openness. Suddenly, Kasparov wasn't just a chess player anymore. He was a hero, a symbol of this new Russia. And this time, he didn't mess around. He beat Karpov decisively and, at just 22 years old, became the youngest world champion in history.
So, after conquering the human face of the Soviet system, Kasparov soon came up against a totally new kind of challenge, an opponent made not of flesh and blood, but of silicon and steel.
In 1997, he sat across the board from IBM's supercomputer Deep Blue, and this thing was an absolute monster. It could calculate 200 million possible chess moves per second. This wasn't just another game. It was a huge moment for humanity's whole relationship with artificial intelligence. And then came the move that changed everything. In the second game, the machine makes this move that was so strange, so subtle, so human, that it just completely freaked Kasparov out. It wasn't about raw power. It was a strategic sacrifice. It felt like intuition, not an algorithm. Kasparov was seriously rattled. He just couldn't believe a machine came up with that on its own.
He actually became paranoid. He was convinced that IBM's engineers were secretly feeding the computer moves during the game. He saw a whole conspiracy. He ended up losing the match, the first time a reigning world champion had ever lost to a computer. And to this day, IBM has never released the full computer logs from that game, which just adds to the mystery.
After finally retiring from professional chess, Kasparov's lifelong war against systems of power moved into its final and maybe its most dangerous phase. He turned his full focus away from the chessboard and toward the political arena to take on his most formidable opponent yet, Vladimir Putin. And he brought the exact same aggressive, in-your-face tactics from his chess career right into politics. He organized huge protests, he tried to run for president, he even got arrested and jailed for his activism. He became one of the Kremlin's loudest and most famous critics on the world stage, right up until he had to flee his own country, fearing for his life.
And here's one of the most unbelievable twists in this entire story. While Kasparov was in jail on a hunger strike, he gets a visitor, and it's Anatoly Karpov, his lifelong rival who's now a politician loyal to Putin, comes to his cell. And he brings him food, not just as a gesture, but to signal that it was safe, that it wasn't poisoned. It was this incredible moment of respect that went way beyond decades of bitter rivalry in politics.
But that moment of peace doesn't mean his war is over. Kasparov's defiance has come at a huge personal cost. He lives in exile, knowing he's a target. And in 2020, when his mother Clara, the woman who had sacrificed absolutely everything for him, passed away in Moscow, he couldn't go home for her funeral. The risk of being assassinated was just too high.
You know, in the end, it really all comes back to this one poster his mother hung in his room when he was a kid. It had a simple, powerful question on it that seems to have guided every single move he's ever made. From his rebellion against the Soviet chess machine to his final ongoing fight for a different kind of Russia, his entire life has been an answer to it. And it kind of leaves you wondering, doesn't it? What is the real price of a life lived in defiance? And who, today, is willing to pay it?